welcome to This Week in X, presented by Crushing Comics. I'm your host, Crisis with a K, and I'm joined here with two of my friends, mutants and comic lovers from around the world, Tyler and Harry. And we are here to talk about Cable number 7. It was out this week, the 20th of January, 2021. It is the first issue of Cable after the end of X of Swords. So we have a whole new status quo, maybe or maybe not, to dig into, and we're going to get right into it. But that's a good reason to mention this is a full spoilers conversation. We're going to talk about this issue. We're going to talk about X of Swords. We're going to talk about everything all the way back to like 1961 Fantastic Four number 1. So just buckle up and know that you're going to a full spoilers talk if you're into that kind of thing. Now, as we tackle Cable number 7, I just want to get everybody's lightning round of first impressions, and then we will dig more deeply into the plot, starting with Tyler.
I enjoyed it. And I mean, Cable as a title is usually pretty lighthearted, and the storytelling is very decompressed. So you don't have a lot of things happening in one issue, and you know that gives Dugan room to deal with like smaller stories and more personal moments and about family, whether it is blood relationships or otherwise, because, you know, Cable has a lot of different families that he forms over the years, which, you know, this young Cable may not have experienced yet. And I can remember a time when we get so many Noto issues in such a short span of time. The art here, though, is incredible compared to his most recent works on X-Men. I mean, we can delve into it a little bit later, but, you know, I really love it.
So I historically don't really care about Cable. And when they made him a youngster, I didn't care about that doubly so. But I've been reading the book and it's been pretty good. And I'm like 3 pages into this book and I'm reading and I'm like, oh my God, like, is this book incredible? Like, it just all clicked so well, and I did not see it coming. Where I think this issue is amazing. I think, as Tyler just said, the art is such a bounce back from that unfortunate Jonathan Hickman X-Men issue that we just read. I think that the story is just really fun and small scale, but like super interesting with this X cult that's stealing babies, and also just the character of young Cable, I think, kind of clicked for me here, where there was like a moment where I was like, I would like to read him in other books. I didn't think I'd ever say that. Like, it totally worked for me in every single way. And I really hope that they can keep this going.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with Harry and briefly disagree with Tyler. I co-sign everything Harry just said. Like, Cable worked suddenly. This was a page turner. I loved it. I mean, I don't have a single negative thing to say I don't think about this whole issue, not just because Rachel Summers was in it either, which is an easy way to my heart, but it was just good. But the thing I'll disagree
and Jean is in it too.
And
so
Jean, but she's chopping vegetables, so it could go either way. But here's the thing that I'll slightly disagree with Tyler. I did not think this was decompressed at all. When I went back to write notes on this, I was like, Duggan got through so many scenes, and we're going to talk about them, so I don't want to enumerate them all here, but like, this book covered a lot of ground, and I think that's what's different to me about the before X of Swords. It felt like before X of Swords, he knew he had a certain amount of plot and a certain amount of issues, and he had to somehow snap to fit. You know, it was like when some older person in your life like stretches a photo out, but then prints it, and you're like, my face does not look like that. That's what that felt like. But this felt like a perfect picture of Cable's face and what Cable the book should be, and I would recommend it to anybody. I think it's one of the best issues of all of Docs, Rocks, Hawks, Pox, Knox, Fox, whatever it's called.
Rocks.
Yeah.
Right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, we start out with a really brief scene, which I think it's just worth mentioning, which is a funeral for Gorgon, which kind of places this book a little bit earlier than some of the other post X of Swords books we've read, because some of the other X of Swords books we've read have already mentioned Gorgon not coming back quite right. But here we're like looking at his crossed swords on a beach, and you have to remember this book was supposed to be out a few weeks ago and got held briefly. So I think we can safely say that it's much earlier. It's definitely before King in Black. It's before
Sword, because he's like the security guy in Sword now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Any other thoughts on this funeral for Gorgon just before we dig into the meat of this issue?
Before we do that, I kind of like that the cover is an homage to the Cable and Hope cover by Olivetti.
Oh, it is.
Cable number 1.
Yeah. Yeah. It totally is.
I thought that was really cool. And then I mean, obviously he's not carrying a red hair girl,
But the pose is
the pose is very similar. So I like it.
I really like that this book is kind of at least still recognizing what happened with Gorgon and X of Swords, because I think it kind of centers or places Cable's character in an interesting place where he saw how the best way, he sees the best way that a mutant can go out. He sees him die like the biggest, the most important death, kind of stands and falls as a mutant with a capital M. And this is a character who is a kid or a teenager who is incredibly unsure of himself. He did not do well in X of Swords. He's not in a place where he knows what to do next. And it's kind of just like it's not like rocket science, but it's a nice way to show like his unsureties about things and where he wants to go from here.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that between the Gorgon scene and then later when he says, I learned in Otherworld what happens when a woman with a sword is charging towards you, you have the sense that he's like come to some decisions about himself as a result of X of Swords. And I don't think that little joke would hit without this Gorgon moment too. Here's one of the captains, right? Cable probably thought that he was going to be the one to survive. And Cable's like, I survived basically through a random happenstance of Doug begging Bay to not behead me, if I'm remembering it right?
Yes.
And here's Gorgon, who had nobody to intercede for him and took down so many people that it tied up the score, and he's dead. And he came back from the other world not the same. And even though it's only one page and there's a few panels, I just think it hits like a sucker punch in terms of springing us toward the emotion of this teen character sits and how he's different than the old version. And to what Harry said, this is the first time where I was like, maybe I'm okay with not getting the old one back.
Yeah.
Like maybe I like that we can do this with Cable, which was shocking to me. So that's why even though this is one page, I just think it bears discussion because I think it just finally sold Teen Cable to me 2 years after the fact.
That's exactly what it is. You're finally like, oh, this is a realized character who has got a set of goals and kind of like you understand where he is at a point in his life more than just being young version of old Cable.
Yeah.
Which
Tyler, not for nothing.
Initially.
Right. Originally, he's just like, I'm this old gruff guy, but little. Yeah. But Tyler, this opening scene ends with him saying he won't fail them, which I think is not just the babies, but X-Men in general, mutants in general. Yeah. But Tyler, of course, we know Cable has some feelings about kidnapped babies, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, technically, he was kidnapped by Apocalypse.
Yeah.
And then infected by the technovirus. Yeah. And then he got to be sent to the future.
Which we won't call kidnapping, but it's, because Cyclops released custody, but he still is whisked away. Yeah.
And I think, this brings us to one of the scenes where it's like, Rachel was like, oh, you have been avoiding me. And he's like, no, I have not. And I think the reason is because Rachel was Mother Ascani.
Yes, she was part of that. That's exactly where I was hoping you were going to go.
Yeah. That's the whole reason why I think, even though they did not explain it, but that line really works because like Rachel knew, because this Rachel has presumably has the memory of where she had been and watched him grow up.
They took care of all that at some point after she got sent to the time stream in Excalibur 75, right?
Yeah. And then I love that small interaction, that like really, really little bit of interaction between the two of them. And it's a little bit more, I don't know. I just enjoyed it. Like it works for new readers. I think it works for, readers like us where we go deep into the history of these two characters. I do have one question though. That has to do with the previous scene with Gorgon's funeral. Why are some of the characters there?
I was thinking that too.
That. Let's just go down the line. So we have Doug and Bay.
Sure.
Paying their respects. Bay they were both champions. Yeah. Magic, a fellow commander.
Yep.
Callisto, maybe?
Yeah.
Best friend to Gorgon, as is well known. Kidding. No.
Well, you could definitely see how Callisto and Gorgon would have been a friend. And then Choir and his cuckoo and Phoebe.
One of them.
I don't really get that one.
I don't get that one. And
then Mondo? I
was like, did they start being friends on Krakoa? Are they in a club together? Like, when did you guys hang out in this world?
Just makes it even more fascinating to me, though. I lingered a long time.
Yeah, I
on
was
that
wondering
page.
why.
If one of us ever gets to interview Jerry Duggan, we just need to be like, hey man,
Why
so
Mondo?
what's up with Mondo? Yeah, what's the Mondo thing about?
Do you think here's me thinking, you know how in New Mutants Mondo keeps having like the face of Krakoa in his stomach to talk to people, like Quattro from Total Recall?
Yeah.
It's like did like Krakoa come down to like pay respects and he was like, Mondo, bring me to the beach, and Mondo's like, no, don't make me. And that's like why he's standing on the other side from Doug, because he's like, don't look at me.
Look at my shame.
That happens.
This book rules.
Yeah, this book. I mean, we're on the first page, and we're
that's my reason from now on. It's like Mondo is there because
it's the Quado rule.
Yeah,
it's the Quado rule.
Okay, so first of all, let it just be said at the time. Well, first I had a question, Harry. All of this nonsense we're talking about up here about Mother Ascani and Kidnapped to the Future. Do you know? You don't know any of that part of X-Men?
I honestly don't have a lot of familiarity with Rachel in particular. I just don't.
Okay.
I will get on it, but it did work for me totally as a new
That was
reader,
why I wanted to ask. Does it still just click? Like
what I liked about it was, I think Hickman's X-Men book, I don't dislike it nearly as much as you do, Peter, but like it is very basic in a lot of ways, and it's mostly just kind of setting up things that we've seen other writers play with. And I did not enjoy the issue at all with Cyclops and Cable and Rachel, but that didn't establish that family dynamic that's been such a big part of this run or this saga or whatever. And I think this was the issue where Duggan took that kind of family kind of dynamic and really fleshed out and made it feel more real and more warm. And it clicked for me in a way that it didn't in Hickman's book. So I just think just in a more recent way, this dynamic's working for me.
And the lighting choices here is so warm, it's so beautiful and nice. And I mean, I also like the fact that when the camera angle changes, the color of the sky is different because the sun is setting, so the light of the sky is like totally different, and you see some front lit and back lit faces. I mean, I don't know. I was staring at this page for a long time.
If I were to buy a page, I would actually buy this page. Like it's just. I think it's ballsy to do orange red lighting on Rachel. Like most artists and colorists wouldn't collaborate to do that because that's her colors anyway, and it just like makes it almost like a little bit weird. How do you do more orange and red on Rachel, right? Like you would want to put her in that normal Krakoan bisexual lighting with the pink and the purple, but no, like Noto fully goes for it, partially because he colors himself and he has the boldness to be able to like just paint it this way, because I think he mostly does just work in color, and then everything Tyler said, like not only all the thing about the light sources and the sunset and everything, but just the sheer chutzpah of going on red and yellow highlights on Rachel, who is all red and yellow, and the way he draws a resemblance to Jean without it exactly being Jean, which is great. And then finally to like hopefully get us to page 3 and beyond, that Rachel historically, when she first is brought on as a character by Claremont, she is mad at first about Cyclops having a baby with Madeline Pryor, because she's like, it's not me, it's a boy, Jean's dead, what are you doing, I don't have a brother. And like Claremont plays this beat for a while, but she comes to love him, and one of her big motivators at the beginning for like even being there is like, I've got to make a world for my little brother that's not going to be the world that was my world. And because Cable comes back as old Cable, you every so often get a good Cable and Rachel moment. They exist, they're there, but it's really hard to get a moment that's true to that like original Rachel, who is so angry at everything and just trying to like make a better world. And that's what this is, and it's so satisfying for me as somebody who's read all of X-Men. But now let's go to Philadelphia. I have to say, I'm an easy mark for this issue because Rachel's one of my favorite X-Men, and it's in Philadelphia. Like, how much more of and it's by Phil Noto. How much more of a custom comic book could you make for me? I had to go to my social networks to determine where this street is, where the gate emerges in Philly, because I know Philly, and I could see this brownstone with the little arched windows in my head. I thought, was it the Union League? Was it the Academy of Music? And And my friends pointed out it's actually right across from where my office was. It's this little street called Juniper, just as it intersects Chestnut Street. The building on the left is like a Dunkin' Donuts, but if you look at it on Google Street View, it is unmistakably where this picture is referenced from, because it has those high arches on that go into the stonework. And I just think it was funny. Like, of course, the Krakoan gate is literally across from the front door of my office building. Of course. So just to get us a little further here, let me just summarize. They go to Philadelphia because he's back on the mutant baby case. They run into these detectives, and Philly cops are a piece of work, as Cable says. I won't disagree. And we just get this wonderful sequence of Rachel detectiving, and the cops, instead of being like mutant bigot cops, are kind of like, cool.
Yeah.
and they wind up going to a different county, and they're like worried about warrants and stuff. And Rachel just keeps being a detective, which is totally consistent with X Factor. And instead of being kind of like awful or racist or whatever, the cops kind of are just playing along with it. And I just thought it was so funny. Like, I just could not stop laughing at the way that Duggan was like moving it along to like get us to the conflict here and not just turn this into them like walking around Philadelphia arguing with each other. You know, it was brisk. Yeah. It kept the plot moving.
I'm such a mark for like cops, like cop characters are just kind of like a little haggard and tired, but they're gonna keep going with it. You know, they're gonna figure it out, and that's what this felt like. They're like, all right, I guess we got mutants today. We're gonna do what we're gonna do, and hopefully we don't get fired.
Yeah.
My favorite line was that, "You're adopted, right? We met your father and your sister, and you're the worst one."
Oh, it's so good.
There's such like a personable, just very like just no personable is the word, just quality to Duggan's writing, and he's also really funny when he wants to be. Obviously, he did like a good Deadpool book, so like it's just fun to have those little jokes like that.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing that I think
sorry, I just do a short digression. Like, are you sure Duggan's Deadpool is funny?
Yes,
it's really sad.
Yes, dude. Yeah,
it is. It can be sad and funny.
It's both. That's why it's good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So
it's heartbreaking though.
So I did not remember wrongly. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. That's the thing.
Oh, it's super tragic. But that first chunk of it that he does with Posen is the best Deadpool book ever written.
He's got good jokes. That's what Duggan's good at, you know.
Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, we just came off of kind of criticizing a little bit Marauders for being like, did it have enough substance? But like, here's a book that was really funny also by Duggan that has, feels like a ton of substance, right? Yeah. I love also, to Tyler's point, that they were on Krakoa either at sunrise or sunset, but the Krakoa is a long way from Philadelphia. Yeah. But then we see the progression of time here where they wind up in Bucks County at night, which means they've been with these detectives for like a really long time. And you can feel it in their body language that they're like, when he's like, you two don't do nothing. Oh, crap. And their shoulders are kind of, and they have their jackets on. And it just is like, again, smart illustration by Noto. I'm sure Duggan maybe said now it's nighttime, but like Noto like took us on this timeline journey so that you can actually realize how long the day has been for Cable and Rachel as they're breaking into this Bucks County mini mansion in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Well, not so much Rachel. It's like Cable is just like, I'm just going to run towards the door, break it down, and start hurting people.
Just charges right through.
I know.
And I think the action scenes in this book are really good for Phil Noto. I think they're very clean. They've got a nice sense of motion. You know, he can feel static. You know, there's no getting around that.
That's the one criticism he tends to get is that he tends to feel static.
But I think he's improved. I think there are scenes in this that are really good. The one scene, Paige, I love to push ahead a bit is when he has they have the kids as the hostages, and you just have the first huge panel of them shooting and then just them getting shot and then drops and the kids are still there. But it feels like there's like a sense of motion to all three panels, which is, you know, really good.
Well, and the other thing in that whole sequence that just killed me was that Cable's like doing this hard, like, I knocked them all down. There's a woman with a sword. He's like giving all these great lines. And Rachel is basically just ogling the babies through the window in all of her rooms. And it's like she does say like, you know, some things, but he's like, I'll be right up. And she goes, oh my God, I'm in their head. They're so cute.
That's the best. That's the same voice I hear when she speaks to Amazing Baby.
Yes, right. Like Rachel, we've come to this point in Rachel's life where like she's like not such a hard ass that she doesn't think things are cute, you know? And it's again consistent across two books with two different authors, and she's being written consistently. It's all I'm asking for.
Well, and also I think I mean, it's not easy. It's not difficult to get Rachel's wrong, but her hair has been kept short in all her appearances, like in X-Men, over here in X-Factor. So I appreciate that because in all 3 books appearance, she's wearing different costume. Or she's not even wearing a costume here. She's just wearing a jacket, pretty casually. And
I love it though.
No, I do.
Hickman said mutants are going to be digging in their closets, like, bring me the looks.
Yeah.
So here's my big question. Turns out the person behind this, which we see in a wonderful monochrome pink major page, splash page, is Strife. So let me back up. Let me back up one step though.
Yeah.
How are you worshiping Strife and you're not looking at Cable and thinking like, does this not look like that guy that we're worshiping? We're like, he's a fake mutant. And so then when Strife was there, I'm like, hold on a second. They're worshiping Strife.
Well, he knows. He's the only one that knows. That's the thing. The rest does not.
Guy. Okay, that's fair.
So he's the only one that knows. But like, are we going full on 90s X-Men now? We have Omega Red, we have Maverick, we have Strife. Like, are we going to get the Game Master? Are we going to get Trevor Fitzroy back?
We've already got Shinobi Shaw. Where's Blaze? Let's go, man.
Yeah.
Start it up.
Let's see some
Shot too. Let's go.
Yeah. Strife was in the first X-Men issue I ever read. It was like a random crossover with Deadpool with X-Force. Like they jumped to the future and Strife was there. And I was like, this guy looks like a Power Rangers villain, but he looks cool. So yeah, I'm into it. I do think, it's like, it's his like alternate future version, not literally, but like it's a cool villain to have.
He's not alternate future.
Yeah. I misspoke.
He's a clone of Cable.
Yes,
right. But
it's him
now
grown up in a different world. Yeah,
right. Because let's just talk about some X-Men time travel BS for a second. If Strife is fully grown and Strife was already cloned from before wherever Teen Cable split off, Strife already has a ton of old man Cable-ish knowledge. Parallel to the journeys he's been through, and this is definitely an adult Strife, which means like, when in Strife's timeline is he here in the present day? Is this some extant other version of Strife? Has he been resurrected somehow? Or is this some in between times version of Strife that's before he gets killed ultimately? Like, Strife is one of those characters that you can't just say, oh, he's here. Like, it comes with a lot more baggage than that.
That's exactly my notes here. I was like, since Strife is a time traveler, do we know if this Strife is from a certain point in time before he died, or did he survive his death that somehow that we did not see?
Right.
This is exactly Doctor Who and River question.
Do you guys think with my innocence it's better that I'm just like, oh, I guess Strife's here? Okay, I'll keep reading.
Well, yes, because it's impossible. Like, talking about a comic guide that I never want to make, do not make me try to straighten out the continuity of Strife's appearances. I don't want to do it. Like, as long as he's not going to get his own book, that's my nightmare. Because as soon as the character in the X line gets their own title book, Strife #1, then I'm like, oh, I've got to make a comic guide for that character.
There goes your...
there goes a whole season for me of trying to put all of Strife's appearances in chronological order. So not only is this scene obviously amazing, but there's 2 more scenes.
So
this is why I was
to the family thing.
Coming back to why I was dissenting with Tyler at the beginning of this episode is, there's a ton of setups in this episode. It is not decompressed. This is like the 5th or 6th different scene that we have now that we're back into the family thing. They're having dinner. Jean's chopping vegetables, not even using her telekinesis, but still wearing a green mini skirt. Cable is calling his father Scott. Does anybody here call their parents by their first name? I do sometimes.
I'm Asian.
Yeah, so that's not allowed.
I don't.
I love this scene. Yeah,
it's so good. But then we get another scene after this. But before we go there, there's a data page that's like, the kid doesn't strike me as a big reader.
Sage is like, all right, nah, this kid is not here to broaden his mind. Like, clearly something's up here.
But again, for X-Men, ostensibly the flagship book being the book that has the main thrust of the Summers relationship, I got so much more from these 2 pages of dinner scene with Scott and Jean and Rachel and Cable than I've gotten from Scott in all of Hickman's X-Men so far.
Duggan ate Hickman's lunch in this issue. Like, he really did just take the dynamic that Hickman established and just did it in a better way. Like, I don't think there's any argument about that. It's warmer. It feels more realized. It's deeper. Like, it works so well.
Yeah.
And it made me
to be
really care about them as a group with really weird like no one of them fully has a connection to the other one, right? Like they all are like
No.
through time or death or
Scott and
something.
Jean.
Yeah, but even
Well,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Like that's a strange thing because this Scott was a revived Scott that was revived by a piece of Phoenix Force. And then
right.
this Jean was revived by Phoenix
The
Force.
Phoenix Force
too.
again after the first Jean was,
and then
you know.
Cable is the child of Scott and Madeline.
Yeah.
And
They're
not
all
Jean. And then
they're all
Rachel
united,
is an
yeah.
alternate timeline child of
Well,
the
it
two of
works.
them.
They're all united by their
they're all-
weirdness.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and in some ways, Rachel was the one who took care of Cable for a while.
And Scott and Jean
Before-
too in the Adventures
Yeah,
of
they
Cyclops
pulled
and
them
Phoenix.
into
Yeah.
correct.
So
it was really cool.
So we love the family scene, but then we get one more kicker. I was sure that Strife thing was going to be the last page of the issue. Like I didn't really know where I was in it, but no, because it's Strife, he goes to a certain person. And since he's at the bar, I thought he was going to ask Blob to be on his team. And I was like, Blob, Blob, Blob. But no, even better, he asks Domino, and Domino in just an amazing page by Noto is, of course it's going to be weird. When did that ever stopped us? And that sealed my love of this issue. It was amazing.
There's something so beautiful about her facial expression. Like it's kind of bemused. It's kind of like welcoming. It's like just kind of like there's such like there's so much personality there. You know, It's a great page. It's like really good even for Noto with the faces.
And I imagine Douglas is having like introducing Bay to like alcohol and stuff like that.
Oh, because in the background it's Doug, right?
Yeah.
I think Noto is like obsessed with Doug, honestly. He seems to really like drawing Doug. Well, I mean, what is there to say? I know it was a lot of gushing. Maybe we didn't. I mean, I guess the one thing we didn't like super talk about here is what does Strife need with mutant babies? It's major echoes of Inferno, right? Like, anybody?
I don't know what is. I don't know. I have no idea because I don't know where this obsession with like mutant babies is coming from. He has never been. I don't know. I don't know what his plans are.
And like, how does the classic Strife plans intersect with Krakoa, right? Like he wasn't resurrected on Krakoa because he's a clone and he's not a present day mutant. So regardless of where he came from, like, wouldn't he like Krakoa? Like, because he's from the Apocalypse future and Apocalypse partly raised him and he's kind of very defined by the whole survival of the fittest thing. Like, I don't know. It's just, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just fascinated to think about like, why would Strife and what does he need with mutant babies? It's just a very strange little conundrum that Duggan has cooked up here.
But we also have the old Cable thing that is dropped. So
it's going to come back.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the thing. I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen to this title.
Maybe Strife isn't into Krakoa raising its kids kind of soft because it's a paradise. He wants to kind of have them a little tougher. That's my prediction. We'll circle back in a month and see.
Well, it's also interesting to me if we play this beat of like, maybe that's how old Cable comes back in. He's chasing Strife, but it's like from some other point in the timeline and they're both trying to prevent something, but that means old Cable knew about Krakoa all along. Like there's a lot of potential beats to play out.
I know.
And also I want to come back to Strife in that awesome pink page says, I need 10 of the brats, get me 5 of them. And behind him, there's a number of tanks with people in them. So why does he only ask for 5? And what is he going to do with them in a bunch of tanks? You know, so there's,
my assumption is that he already have 5 and that's where the other 5 is.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That they're already there.
Well,
If I need 10 of the
10.
brats.
That implies that he needs
Get
10.
me 5 of them. I don't know. It's good stuff.
I know.
So we love this. Is there anything else to say other than read this darn issue if you haven't already? How did you get through this whole conversation and not go and read it yet? I don't know. But if you haven't, it's time.
This issue just showed me that like Phil Noto and Jerry Duggan are a great team. Like once like Jerry Duggan's able to like crack into like a character's humanity and just personality like he did with Cable in this issue, like Noto's able to kind of realize that with like, as we've said 100 times, so much personality with the faces and like with the movement and body language, what have you. I just think they work really well together. I hope it can keep this going.
Yep. I agree.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our discussion about Cable number 7. Hopefully, you've enjoyed our This Week in X. We do it because we think X-Men comics are better when they're read together. Clearly, we individually love this, but we loved it even more when we assembled our loves, just like we're putting together Captain Planet. So, look, if you're looking for our other issue of the week, we talk about X-Force separately from this, so please tune into that. It's really great if you like and subscribe and comment, because that helps us know that you're along for the ride, and it helps us know that this is being received by the X-Men fans out there just like us. So please do, and please come back next week because there's a lot of X-Men books on the schedule. And on the behalf of myself, Tyler, and Harry, and our currently MIA once again sister Faria, we thank you so much for watching, and be well.
Bye.